Welcome to the Master Course on the Introduction to Security Engineering. Over the next several modules, we will embark on a journey from foundational principles to practical, hands-on tools, building a complete picture of one of the most critical roles in the digital world. Let's begin. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's session, Lesson 1.1, Introduction to the Security Engineer. Imagine a medieval kingdom. It has strong walls, watchtowers, and guards at the gate. Who designed those walls? Who decided where the towers should go for the best line of sight? Who ensured the gate was reinforced against a battering ram? It wasn't the guards who patrolled day to day. It was the royal architect and engineer. In the digital world, a security engineer is that master architect, designing and building the defenses that protect an organization's most valuable treasures, its data. By the end of this lesson, our objective is to define the role and primary responsibilities of a security engineer within an organization. We will explore their core mission and then break down their responsibilities into 4 key areas: designing, building, testing, and maintaining digital defenses. Now let's move into the core content. The primary mission of a security engineer is to proactively prevent security breaches by designing and implementing secure systems from the ground up. They are the builders and the architects of an organization's security posture. Their responsibilities can be broken down into 4 main pillars. First, design and architecture. Before a new network, application, or system is built, the security engineer designs its security framework. They answer critical questions like, how will we control access? How will data be encrypted? Where do we need firewalls? Their goal is to make the system secure by design, not as an afterthought. Second, build and implement. Security engineers don't just create blueprints, they also do the hands-on work of building the defenses. This includes configuring firewalls, setting up intrusion detection systems, implementing encryption protocols, and deploying security tools across the organization. Third, test and validate. A fortress is useless if you don't know its weaknesses. Security engineers constantly test their own defenses. They perform vulnerability assessments and penetration tests to find holes before attackers can. And finally, maintain and upgrade. The threat landscape is always changing. New viruses are created and new attack methods are discovered daily. A security engineer's job is never done. They are responsible for updating and upgrading security systems, responding to new threats, and ensuring the defenses remain effective over time. Now that we've laid the theoretical groundwork, it's time to solidify your understanding. We've mentioned that a security analyst is like a guard on the wall. They monitor for active threats, while the engineer is the one who designed and built the wall itself. This is a great one to try yourself. Here's your activity. Research and list 3 key differences in the day-to-day tasks between a security engineer and a security analyst. When you do this, you'll discover that an analyst's day is often filled with monitoring alerts and investigating active incidents, while an engineer's day is focused on designing systems, configuring firewalls, and writing security policies. The builder versus the guard. To conclude our lesson, let's move to a brief assessment. To really crystallize this concept, here's a prompt to consider. Here's your prompt. In 1 or 2 sentences, describe the main objective of a security engineer. What this reveals is that the main objective of a security engineer is to protect an organization's data and systems by designing, building, and maintaining a robust and resilient security architecture, aiming to prevent breaches before they happen. Lesson 1.2, the role of the security engineer. We've established that the security engineer is the architect of the kingdom's defenses. But what does that mean on a daily basis? They are actively inspecting the walls for cracks, upgrading the gatehouse locks, and training the guards on new defense strategies. Our learning objective for this session is to identify the specific tasks and contributions of a security engineer in maintaining an organization's security posture.
We will detail their day-to-day responsibilities, covering their involvement in system design, security tool management, vulnerability assessments, and incident response. A security engineer's contributions are both proactive and reactive. Their daily tasks are diverse and critical. First, they are deeply involved in security system design and implementation. When a new server is set up, the engineer is there to ensure it's built securely from the start, integrating controls like firewalls and VPNs. Next, they are the masters of the security toolkit, responsible for managing and maintaining security tools. This includes configuring and updating antivirus software, intrusion detection systems, and the SIEM systems that collect and analyze security data. They also handle vulnerability management, constantly scanning the organization's networks for weaknesses. When a vulnerability is found, they prioritize the risk and work with other IT teams to get it fixed. They also help write the rulebook for security through security policy and procedure development, creating policies for things like password strength and data handling. Finally, they provide crucial incident response support. While an analyst is the first responder, the engineer analyzes how an attacker got in and then builds new defenses to prevent it from happening again. To really solidify this concept, here's an activity to try. Here is your activity. Outline a typical day in the life of a security engineer, highlighting at least 3 distinct responsibilities. When you do this, you'll paint a picture of a dynamic role. For example, 9 a.m. might be a team meeting on new firewall rules. 11 a.m. could be running vulnerability scans on web servers, and 2 p.m. might be spent helping to write a new password policy. Excellent work on the activity. To conclude our lesson, we'll move to a brief assessment. A company is launching a new mobile app for its customers. Consider this scenario. Here is your prompt. Which of the following tasks would be a security engineer's primary contribution to this project? A. Monitoring the app for live attacks after launch. B. Designing the secure login and data encryption features before development begins. C. Answering customer support calls about the app. The correct answer is B. Designing the secure login and data encryption features before development begins perfectly reflects their core role in making systems secure by design.
Lesson 1.3, Qualifications for a Security Engineer. Welcome to Lesson 1.3. To become a master builder of digital fortresses, one needs a specific set of tools and skills. A security engineer needs a blend of technical knowledge, formal education, and hands-on skills to be effective. Our objective is to list the essential qualifications, skills, and educational backgrounds typically required for a security engineer position. We will cover 3 main areas: education and certifications, technical skills, and essential soft skills. First up, education and certifications. A bachelor's degree in computer science or cybersecurity is a common starting point. Industry certifications prove specific knowledge. Key certifications include CompTIA Security Plus, the Advanced CISSP, and the Certified Ethical Hacker. Next are the technical hard skills. A deep understanding of networking is crucial. You can't protect a network if you don't know how it works. Proficiency in operating systems like Windows and Linux is a must, as is knowledge of scripting languages like Python for automating tasks. Of course, hands-on experience with security tools and cloud security skills are also in high demand. Finally, we have the professional soft skills. The ability to analyze complex problems is paramount. Engineers must also have excellent communication skills to explain security issues to non-technical people. And of course, a sharp attention to detail is critical, as a single misconfiguration can create a major vulnerability. This is a great one to try yourself to see how these qualifications fit together. Here is your activity. Create a personal development plan, identifying 1 technical skill, 1 certification, and 1 soft skill you would like to acquire or improve. What this reveals is a clear path forward. For example, you might decide to learn Python.
study for the Security Plus exam, and practice explaining technical topics to a friend. To conclude, let's check our understanding. Here's a quick matching prompt. Here is your prompt. Match the qualification to its relevance. 1. Python scripting. 2. CISSP certification. 3. Communication skills. A. Explaining a security risk to the marketing department. B. Automating the process of scanning for vulnerabilities. C. Proving a broad understanding of security management. When you work through this, the connections become clear. Python scripting is for automating scans. The CISSP proves a broad understanding of security management. And communication skills are for explaining risk to other departments.
Lesson 1.4: The Importance of the Security Engineer. Welcome to Lesson 1.4. What happens when the kingdom's architect does a poor job? The walls crumble and the kingdom falls. The consequences in the digital world are just as dire. This is why the role of the security engineer is not just an IT job. It's a vital function for business survival. Our learning objective is to explain the critical importance of security engineers in protecting digital assets and ensuring business continuity. We will discuss their role in protecting assets, enabling business operations, and managing risk. First, security engineers are tasked with protecting critical assets. An organization's most valuable assets are digital, including customer data, financial records, and intellectual property. The engineer builds the digital vaults that protect this information from theft. Second, they are essential for ensuring business continuity. A major security breach, like a ransomware attack, can grind a business to a halt. By designing resilient systems, engineers ensure the business can continue to operate even when faced with threats. Finally, their work is about managing risk and maintaining trust. Customers will not do business with a company they believe cannot protect their personal information. Strong security engineering is a cornerstone of customer trust. To really bring this home, here's a chance to connect these concepts to the real world. Here is your activity. Write a short paragraph explaining the importance of a security engineer, citing a real-world example of a security breach that strong engineering could have prevented. When you do this, you might cite the Equifax breach. What this reveals is how a failure in vulnerability management, a core engineering task, can have catastrophic consequences, underscoring the vital importance of the role. To conclude, let's assess our understanding of their role in the bigger picture. Here is your prompt. How does a security engineer contribute to an organization's overall risk management strategy? A solid answer would state that a security engineer contributes to risk management by identifying potential digital threats and vulnerabilities, and then implementing security controls to reduce the likelihood and impact of an attack, aligning the company's technology with its tolerance for risk. Lesson 1.5: Important Terminologies. Welcome to Lesson 1.5. Every profession has its own language. To be a security engineer, you need to understand the language of cybersecurity. Learning these core terms is the first step. Our objective is to define key cybersecurity terminologies relevant to a security engineer. We will define and provide context for a foundational set of terms: threat, vulnerability, risk, exploit, and incident. First, a threat. A threat is a potential for harm. This is the who or what that could attack you, like a group of cybercriminals or a computer virus. Next, a vulnerability. A vulnerability is a weakness or flaw. This is a flaw that a threat can take advantage of, like outdated software or a weak password. This brings us to risk. Risk is the potential for loss when a threat exploits a vulnerability. It's the intersection of a threat and a vulnerability. For example, the risk of data theft exists because a hacker, the threat, could exploit a bug in your website code, the vulnerability. An exploit is the specific method or code used to take advantage of a vulnerability, like a specially crafted email that runs malicious code. And finally, an incident. This is a security event where an attacker successfully exploits a vulnerability, resulting in a negative impact. It's when the risk becomes a reality. Now, to help you build your own cybersecurity lexicon, here's something to try. Here is your activity. Create a flashcard set for 10 new cybersecurity terms. On one side, the term. On the other, a simple one-sentence definition. When you create these, you'll be actively learning the language of the industry. A card for phishing, for instance, might define it as an attack where a fraudster sends a fake email to trick a person into revealing sensitive information. To conclude, let's check our understanding with a quick fill-in-the-blanks exercise. Here is your prompt. A piece of unpatched software represents a blank. A hacker who knows how to attack that software is a blank. The likelihood that the hacker will attack and cause damage is the blank. The output should clearly show you the relationship. A piece of unpatched software represents a vulnerability. A hacker is a threat. The likelihood of that attack is the risk.
Module 2. Foundational IT Concepts. Welcome to Module 2. To defend the kingdom, you must first understand how it's built, from the layout of the roads to the design of the houses. This module covers essential IT infrastructure knowledge. Lesson 2.1. Windows Fundamentals. Welcome to Lesson 2.1. Your computer's operating system is like the blueprint of a house. Windows, being one of the most common OS in the corporate world, is a house you absolutely must know how to secure. Our objective is to describe the basic architecture and core functionalities of the Windows operating system relevant to security. We will explore key components like the kernel, the file system, and built-in security features. Let's start with the core architecture. Windows separates operations into two modes, kernel mode versus user mode. Kernel mode is the heart of the OS, with unrestricted access to all hardware. User mode is where your applications run, with limited access. This separation is a fundamental security principle. Next is the registry, a central database that stores low-level settings for the OS and applications. Attackers often try to modify it to hide their presence. We also have the NTFS file system and its built-in permissions, which allow you to specify exactly which users can read, write, or execute a file. And finally, Windows has several powerful built-in security features: User Account Control, or UAC, Windows Defender, and BitLocker. User Account Control is the prompt that asks for permission before an app makes changes. Windows Defender is the built-in antivirus. And BitLocker provides full disk encryption. This is a great one to try yourself in your own system. Here is your activity. On your Windows computer, find 3 common security features in the Windows Security Dashboard and write down the purpose of each. When you do this, you'll see Windows Defender for malware protection, the Windows Firewall for network traffic control, and User Account Control for preventing unauthorized changes, all working together to protect your machine. To wrap up, let's consider a scenario. An employee accidentally downloads a suspicious program. When they try to run it, the screen dims and a prompt asks for administrator permission. Here is your prompt. Which Windows security feature is responsible for this action? The output should clearly show you that this is User Account Control, or UAC, in action. Lesson 2.2, Linux Fundamentals. Welcome to Lesson 2.2. If Windows is a pre-built house, Linux is a custom-built home where you have access to all the raw materials. It powers the majority of the world's web servers, and as a security engineer, you must be comfortable using its command line. Our learning objective is to understand basic Linux commands and file system structure pertinent to security operations. We'll cover the file system hierarchy, essential commands, and the critical concept of file permissions.
The Linux file system hierarchy starts from a single root directory, the /. Key directories include /bin for commands, /etc for configuration files, /home for user directories, and /var/log for system logs, which are critical for investigations. You interact with Linux via the command line interface. Essential commands include pwd to show you where you are, ls to list files, and cd to change directory. Cat is used to display the content of a file. A cornerstone of Linux security is its file permissions. Every file and directory has permissions for 3 types of users: the owner, the group, and others, with permissions to read, write, and execute. I encourage you to run these next commands to see the power of this system firsthand. Here is your activity. Use an online Linux terminal. Practice navigating with ls, cd, and pwd. Create a new file with touch my test file. When you run these, you'll experience the direct control the command line offers. You'll move through directories, see your newly created file appear, and get a feel for the basic rhythm of working in a Linux environment. To conclude, let's test this knowledge. You are in a Linux terminal and need to view the contents of a configuration file named sshd-config located in the /etc/ssh/sshd-config directory. Here is your prompt. What single command would you use to display its content on the screen? The answer is the cat command, followed by the full path to the file, cat/etc/ssh/sshd-config. Lesson 2.3, Network Fundamentals. Welcome to Lesson 2.3. A computer network is the digital road system that allows all our devices to communicate. To protect the kingdom, you must understand how these roads are laid out and where to place the guard posts. Our objective is to explain fundamental networking concepts, including network types, devices, and topologies. We will define what a network is, explore LANs and WANs, and identify key hardware. At its core, a network is 2 or more computers connected to share resources. We have 2 main types: the LAN, or local area network, and the WAN, or wide area network. A LAN is a small, local network like in an office. A WAN is a large network connecting LANs together. The most famous WAN is the Internet. Several core devices make this possible. A router is the traffic director, connecting different networks together. A switch is the local intersection, connecting devices within the same LAN. And a firewall is the gatekeeper, a security device that monitors and filters traffic based on security rules. Finally, every device gets a unique IP address, which acts like a street address to ensure data packets are delivered to the right place. Here is a simple diagram you'll want to draw to further solidify this concept. Now for a quick assessment. You have 3 computers and a printer in an office that need to be connected to each other, but not yet to the Internet. Here is your prompt. Which network device would be most appropriate for connecting these devices together on a local area network? The output should clearly show you that the correct device for this job is a switch. Lesson 2.4, the OSI Model. Welcome to Lesson 2.4. Sending data across a network is a complex process. The OSI model is a standardized postal system that breaks down this process into 7 manageable layers. Understanding these layers is crucial for diagnosing problems and securing communications. Our objective is to describe the 7 layers of the OSI model and their respective functions. We'll walk through each layer, from the physical cable to the application you interact with. A good mnemonic to remember them is, please do not throw sausage pizza away. Layer 1 is the physical layer, the cables and radio waves. Layer 2 is the data link layer, which handles error-free transfer on the same network using MAC addresses. Layer 3 is the network layer, which routes packets across different networks using IP addresses. This is where the concept of ports lives.
Layer 4 is the transport layer, ensuring reliable delivery using protocols like TCP and UDP. This is where the concept of ports lives. Layer 5 is the session layer, managing connections. Layer 6 is the presentation layer, the translator, that handles things like encryption and data formatting. And finally, Layer 7 is the application layer, which contains the protocols that applications use to communicate, like HTTP for web browsing. This is a great one to try yourself. Think about the process of browsing a website. Here is your activity. Map the common protocols involved in browsing a website to their corresponding OSI layers, specifically HTTP, TCP, and IP. When you run this exercise, the layers become clear. HTTP is an application layer protocol running on top of TCP at the transport layer, which in turn uses IP at the network layer for addressing. To conclude our lesson, let's consider a firewall. It's configured to block all web traffic by blocking port 80, the standard port for HTTP. Here's your prompt. At which layer of the OSI model is this firewall primarily operating? Explain your reasoning. What this reveals is that the firewall is operating at Layer 4, the transport layer. The concept of ports is a function of Layer 4 protocols like TCP and UDP, which manage service-to-service communication.
Module 3, Core Security Concepts and Regulations. Welcome to Module 3. This module introduces the rule book of cybersecurity. The digital world is governed by security frameworks and data protection regulations that every engineer must know and enforce. Lesson 3.1, GDPR. Welcome to Lesson 3.1. Imagine your personal information is your personal property. The General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR, is a landmark EU law that treats personal data exactly like that. It sets strict rules for any organization in the world that handles the data of EU citizens. Our learning objective is to summarize the key principles and requirements of the GDPR. We'll cover its scope, core principles, and the fundamental rights it grants to individuals. The GDPR applies to any organization, regardless of location, that processes the personal data of individuals in the EU. It is built on several key principles, including purpose limitation, data minimization, and integrity and confidentiality. Data can only be collected for specific purposes. You should only collect what is absolutely necessary, and you must protect it with appropriate security. It also grants individuals powerful rights, including the right to access and the right to erasure, also known as the right to be forgotten. This includes the right to access a copy of your data and the right to erasure, allowing you to have your data deleted. To really solidify this concept, here's a scenario to analyze. Here is your activity. A social media company collects your location data even when you're not using the app and sells it without your clear consent. Which GDPR principles are potentially being violated? The output should clearly show you violations of purpose limitation. They're using the data for a purpose you didn't agree to, and lawfulness, fairness, and transparency, as the collection and sale were not clearly disclosed. Excellent work on the activity. Now for a final assessment. A user in France signs up for a newsletter from a US-based company. They later want the company to delete their name and email address from its database permanently. Here is your prompt. Which specific GDPR right allows them to make this request? The answer, of course, is the right to erasure, or the right to be forgotten. Lesson 3.2, DPDPA. Welcome to Lesson 3.2. Just as the EU established its own digital property rights, many other countries are creating their own rulebooks. India's Digital Personal Data Protection Act, or DPDPA, is a significant recent example. Our objective is to outline the main provisions and implications of the DPDPA in India. We'll discuss its emphasis on consent, the roles it defines, and its breach notification requirements. The DPDPA applies to the processing of digital personal data within India. Its cornerstone is consent.
Personal data can typically only be processed with clear and specific consent from the individual, who is known as the data principal. The company processing the data is the data fiduciary. Key obligations for organizations include providing clear notice about data collection, ensuring data accuracy, and implementing reasonable security safeguards to prevent breaches. This is a direct mandate for security engineering. In the event of a breach, organizations must notify both the Data Protection Board of India and the affected individuals. This is a great one to try yourself to see the global connections in data privacy. Here is your activity. Compare and contrast a key aspect of DPDPA with GDPR. For example, how does consent in DPDPA compare to the lawfulness, fairness, and transparency principle in GDPR? What this reveals is a shared foundation. Both frameworks emphasize that the user must be clearly informed and agree to how their data is used, placing the burden of transparency squarely on the organization. To conclude, a direct question about the DPDPA's scope. Here is your prompt. Who does the DPDPA in India apply to, and what are its two primary objectives? The DPDPA applies to any entity processing the digital personal data of individuals within India. Its primary objectives are to recognize the right of individuals to protect their personal data and to establish the need to process that data for lawful purposes.
Lesson 3.3, PCI DSS. Welcome to Lesson 3.3. If general data laws are the rules of the road, the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, or PCI DSS, is a special set of rules for armored trucks carrying money. It's a mandatory standard for any organization that handles credit card information. Our objective is to identify the primary goals and scope of the PCI DSS. We will explain what it is and outline its 6 core objectives, which are broken down into 12 requirements. The primary goal of PCI DSS is simple: to protect cardholder data. The entire standard is focused on keeping credit card numbers safe. It's organized around 6 core objectives. 1. Build and maintain a secure network. This means using firewalls and changing default passwords. 2. Protect cardholder data, which requires encrypting stored data and data in transit. 3. Maintain a vulnerability management program, which means using antivirus and developing secure applications. 4. Implement strong access control measures, restricting access on a need-to-know basis. 5. Regularly monitor and test networks. And 6. Maintain an information security policy. This is a great one to try yourself to get familiar with these critical controls. Here is your activity. From the 12 requirements of PCI DSS, list 5 specific security controls that an organization must implement. When you run this, you'll pull out key actions like install a firewall, change default passwords, encrypt stored data, use antivirus software, and restrict physical access to data. Now, let's assess this with a scenario. A small online store saves its customers' credit card numbers in a simple, unencrypted text file on its web server. Here is your prompt. Which core objective of PCI DSS is this store most clearly violating? The output should clearly show you this is a direct violation of Objective 2, protect cardholder data, and specifically Requirement 3, which mandates the protection of stored cardholder data. Lesson 3-4, NIST 800-53. Welcome to Lesson 3-4. Imagine you're building a federal courthouse. You must follow a massive, detailed book of building codes. NIST SP 800-53 is that book of codes for securing U.S. federal information systems. It's a comprehensive catalog of security and privacy controls. Our objective is to understand the purpose and structure of the NIST 800-53 framework. We'll explain the role of NIST and how its catalog of controls is organized into families.
The primary purpose of NIST 800-53 is to provide a standardized, comprehensive catalog of security and privacy controls for all U.S. federal information systems, though it is widely adopted by private companies as a best practice. The framework is a large library of controls, which are specific safeguards like enforce minimum password complexity. These hundreds of controls are organized into 20 different families for easier management, including access control, audit and accountability, incident response, and risk assessment. This helps organizations think about security in a structured way. To get a feel for this structure, I encourage you to explore it yourself. Here is your activity. Search online for the NIST 800-53 control families. Choose one family and list 3 specific examples of controls you might find within it. When you do this, you might choose the Physical and Environmental Protection family. What this reveals are concrete controls, like locking server room doors, having fire suppression systems, and monitoring visitor access. To conclude, let's check our understanding. A U.S. government agency is building a new system to manage employee payroll and needs to decide how to protect the data. Here is your prompt. Which document would provide them with a detailed catalog of security controls they are required to select from? The answer is, of course, NIST Special Publication 800-53.
Lesson 3.5, the CIA Triad. Welcome to Lesson 3.5. Before an architect designs a building, they must understand 3 principles. It must be strong, private, and people must be able to get in and out. In information security, these same 3 principles form the CIA Triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. It is the universally accepted cornerstone of all security. Our objective is to define and explain these 3 core principles. First is C for confidentiality. This is about keeping secrets secret, ensuring information is not disclosed to unauthorized individuals. It's protected by things like encryption and access controls. Next is I for integrity. This is about maintaining the accuracy and trustworthiness of data. It ensures data has not been changed in an unauthorized way. It's protected using techniques like hashing and digital signatures. Finally, we have A for availability. This principle is about ensuring that information and systems are accessible and usable when needed by an authorized user. It's protected through system redundancy, backups, and denial of service protection. This is a great one to try yourself to connect these principles to the real world. Here is your activity. Provide a real-world example for each component of the CIA Triad. For each, describe how it might be compromised and a control that could protect it. When you do this, you might think of a doctor's office for confidentiality. A compromise is leaving a patient's file open on a desk. A protection is a clean desk policy. For integrity, a bank transfer. A compromise is an attacker changing the destination account. A protection is using transaction signing. For availability, an e-commerce website. A compromise is a DDoS attack, crashing the site. Protection is using an anti-DDoS service. Now for our assessment. A ransomware attack encrypts all the files on a company server, making them unreadable and unusable by employees. Here is your prompt. Which core principle of the CIA Triad has been primarily violated? The output should clearly show you that the principle of availability has been violated. The data is not accessible to authorized users.
Lesson 3.6, Zero Trust. Welcome to Lesson 3.6. The traditional security model was like a medieval castle, a strong wall and moat, but once you were inside, you were generally trusted. The Zero Trust model is completely different. It operates like a modern spy agency headquarters, assuming the enemy is already inside. Its motto is, never trust, always verify. Our objective is to explain the core principles and benefits of the Zero Trust security model. We will contrast it with the traditional approach and discuss its core pillars. Zero Trust assumes there is no inside and outside. Access to resources is granted on a strict, least privilege, need-to-know basis. It operates on 3 core principles. 1. Verify explicitly. Always authenticate and authorize based on all available data points. 2. Use least privilege access. Give users only the bare minimum permissions they need. And 3. Assume breach. Operate as if attackers are already inside your network. A key concept that enables this is microsegmentation. Instead of 1 MIG open network, microsegmentation breaks the network into tiny, isolated zones, like putting keycard locked doors on every single room inside the headquarters. I encourage you to think about the practical steps to implement this model. Here is your activity. Propose 3 practical ways an organization could begin implementing a Zero Trust approach. What this reveals are actionable steps like implement multi-factor authentication for all users, start segmenting the network, and classify all data to know what is most sensitive. To conclude our lesson, let's focus on the core philosophy. Here's your prompt. Describe the fundamental shift in mindset required to adopt a Zero Trust security model. The fundamental shift is from trusting users and devices that are inside the network to a default position of distrust. The mindset changes from trust but verify to never trust, always verify, where every access request must be continuously and explicitly authenticated regardless of its origin.
Module 4. Threat Landscape and Incident Response. Welcome to Module 4. Now that you understand the kingdom and its laws, it's time to learn about the enemy. This module covers how attackers operate, how we watch for them, and the formal process for responding when the alarm bells ring. Lesson 4.1. Hacker Methodology. Welcome to Lesson 4.1. Professional attackers follow a structured methodology. Understanding this process, often called the cyber kill chain, is the key to disrupting their attacks at every stage. Our objective is to describe the typical phases and techniques employed by attackers in a cyber attack. We will walk through the 7 phases of the cyber kill chain model. Phase 1 is reconnaissance, where the attacker gathers information about the target. Phase 2 is weaponization, where the attacker creates a malicious payload, like a virus attached to an email. Phase 3 is delivery, sending that payload to the target, often via a phishing email. Phase 4 is exploitation, where the code is triggered, taking advantage of a vulnerability. Phase 5 is installation, where the exploit allows the attacker to install malware to gain persistent access. Phase 6 is command and control, where the malware phones home to a server controlled by the attacker. And Phase 7 is actions on objectives, where the attacker finally carries out their goal, such as stealing data. This is a great one to try yourself. Consider a common phishing attack. Here is your activity. Map the steps of a typical phishing attack to the 7 phases of the cyber kill chain. When you do this, the chain becomes clear. The phishing email is delivery. The user opening the attachment is exploitation. The malware installing itself is installation. The malware sending data out is actions on objectives. To conclude, a quick check. An attacker is actively scanning a company's public-facing web servers to identify which versions of software they are running. Here is your prompt. Which phase of the cyber kill chain is the attacker currently in? The output should clearly show you that this is Phase 1, reconnaissance. Welcome to Lesson 4.2. Imagine the central watchtower of the kingdom, staffed 24/7.
This central command post is a Security Operations Center, or SOC. It is the nerve center for an organization's cybersecurity defense. Our objective is to define what an SOC is and its primary functions. We'll cover its core mission, key functions, and typical personnel roles. The primary mission of an SOC is to continuously monitor and improve an organization's security posture while preventing, detecting, analyzing, and responding to incidents. Its key functions include proactive monitoring of the network, threat detection and analysis of alerts, and leading the incident response when a real threat is confirmed. They also perform log management, collecting and analyzing log data from across the enterprise. The SOC team has several key roles: the Tier 1 analyst, the Tier 2 analyst, the Tier 3 analyst or threat hunter, and the SOC manager oversees the entire operation. To really solidify these roles, here is an activity to try. Here is your activity. List the key personnel roles in an SOC and write one sentence describing the primary responsibility of each. What this reveals is a clear hierarchy of responsibility, from the initial monitoring and triage of alerts by Tier 1 to the deep investigation by Tier 2, the proactive hunting by Tier 3, and the overall management by the SOC manager. Let's conclude our lesson with a look at the SOC's overall function. Here is your prompt. How does an SOC contribute to both proactive and reactive security efforts? A strong answer would explain that an SOC is proactive through continuous monitoring and threat hunting, aiming to detect threats before they cause damage. It is reactive by leading the incident response process to contain, eradicate, and recover from security incidents after they have been detected.
Lesson 4.3, Incident Response and Management. Welcome to Lesson 4.3. A fire has been spotted in the kingdom. Incident response, or IR, is the fire drill for cybersecurity. It is a structured, organized approach to managing the aftermath of a security breach. Our learning objective is to explain the importance of a structured incident response process. We will define what an incident is, what an IR plan entails, and discuss its primary goals. An incident response plan, or IRP, is a formal document that outlines exactly how an organization will respond to a security incident. Having this plan before an incident is critical. The main goals of incident response are to first, confirm or dispel the incident; second, minimize the impact by limiting the damage; third, restore operations quickly; and finally, learn from the incident to prevent it from happening again. A structured process is crucial for speed, effectiveness, and regulatory compliance. I encourage you to think like a responder. Here's a mini plan to draft. Here is your activity. Draft a brief, 3-step mini incident response plan for an employee reporting they may have clicked on a phishing link. When you do this, you'll naturally follow the logic of response. Step 1 would be to isolate the employee's computer from the network. Step 2 would be to analyze the computer for malware. And Step 3 would be to reset the employee's password. Now, to check our understanding of the core concept, here is your prompt. In your own words, define incident response and list its 2 main goals. A solid definition would be that incident response is the structured process an organization follows after a breach has been detected. Its 2 main goals are to minimize the damage and to restore normal business operations as quickly as possible. Lesson 4.4, Levels of Incident Management. Welcome to Lesson 4.4. Not all incidents are created equal. Effective incident management requires triage, the process of prioritizing incidents based on their severity and potential impact. Our objective is to differentiate between various levels of incident management and their associated actions.
We will explore a common model for classifying incidents into severity levels. We prioritize to ensure that the biggest fires are put out first. A common framework uses 4 levels: low, medium, high, and critical. A severity 4 low incident has little to no impact, like a single instance of adware blocked by antivirus. A severity 3 medium incident has limited potential impact, like a phishing attempt that no one clicked on. A severity 2 high incident has significant potential impact, like a malware infection on a single server in the finance department. And a severity 1 critical incident is the all-hands-on-deck emergency, like a company-wide ransomware attack. Each level dictates the speed and scale of the response. To really solidify this concept, here's a chance to practice your own triage skills. Here is your activity. Categorize the following incidents into the appropriate priority levels and justify your choice. 1. A keylogger on the CEO's laptop. 2. The company website is defaced. 3. An employee's computer has an outdated version of Adobe Reader. What this reveals is a clear priority order. The keylogger on the CEO's laptop is critical due to the sensitive data involved. The defaced website is high because it affects company reputation. The outdated software is low, as it is a vulnerability, not an active incident. To conclude our lesson, a question on the impact of this process. Here is your prompt. How does incident prioritization impact the response process? The output should clearly show you that prioritization directly impacts the speed, resources, and escalation level of the response. High-priority incidents trigger an immediate, resource-intensive response, while low-priority incidents are handled with less urgency.
Lesson 4.5. The Process of Incident Management. Welcome to Lesson 4.5. We've established that incident response needs a plan and a priority level. Now, we'll look at the step-by-step playbook that responders follow, a 6-step process for handling an incident from start to finish. Our objective is to outline the step-by-step process as defined by SANS and NIST: preparation, identification, containment, eradication, recovery, and lessons learned. Phase 1 is preparation. This is the work you do before an incident occurs, like creating the plan and training the team. Phase 2 is identification, where an event is analyzed and confirmed to be a genuine security incident. Phase 3 is containment. The goal here is to stop the bleeding and prevent the incident from getting worse, for example, by isolating an infected PC from the network. Phase 4 is eradication, which focuses on completely removing the threat from the environment and fixing the root cause. Phase 5 is recovery, the process of carefully restoring the systems back to normal operation, often from clean backups. And finally, Phase 6 is lessons learned. The team meets to review what happened, what went wrong, and how the process can be improved, feeding this information back into the preparation phase. This is a great one to visualize for yourself. Here is your activity. Create a simple flowchart illustrating the 6 phases of the incident management process for a detected malware infection. When you draw this out, you will see a clear, logical loop, starting with preparation and ending with lessons learned, which then informs the next round of preparation, creating a cycle of continuous improvement. Excellent work on the activity. To conclude our lesson, we'll move to a brief assessment to check the sequence. Here is your prompt. Place the following incident management steps in the correct order and briefly explain each one: recovery, containment, identification. The correct order is first, identification, detecting and confirming the breach. Second, containment,
isolating affected systems to prevent spreading. And third, recovery, restoring the systems to normal operation after the threat is gone.
Module 5, Threat Intelligence Frameworks. Welcome to Module 5. This module introduces the advanced spycraft of cybersecurity. It's not enough to defend your walls. You need to understand your enemy, who they are, how they operate, and what their motives are. This is the world of threat intelligence. Lesson 5.1, Introduction to APT and TTPs. Welcome to Lesson 5.1. Imagine the difference between a common street burglar and a highly trained state-sponsored spy. In cybersecurity, an advanced persistent threat, or APT, is that spy. To fight them, we study their entire operational playbook, their tactics, techniques, and procedures, or TTPs. Our objective is to define APTs and TTPs and their significance. We will differentiate between common cyber attacks and APTs and break down the concept of TTPs. An APT is advanced, using sophisticated techniques, persistent, remaining in a network for a very long time, and a threat, with both the intent and capability to cause harm. They are often state-sponsored groups aiming for espionage or sabotage. TTPs are the framework we use to describe an attacker's behavior: tactic, technique, and procedure. The tactic is the high-level goal, like initial access. The technique is the specific method used to achieve it, like phishing. And the procedure is the detailed step-by-step implementation of that technique. By analyzing TTPs, defenders can identify a specific APT group even if they change their malware. To really solidify this concept, I encourage you to research one of these groups yourself. Here is your activity. Research a known APT group, e.g. APT28 or Fancy Bear, and identify one or two of their characteristic TTPs. When you do this, you'll find specific behavioral patterns. For example, you might discover that a particular group has a preference for using a certain type of spear phishing email or exploiting a specific vulnerability to gain their initial foothold. To conclude our lesson, let's compare these advanced threats to more common attacks. Here is your prompt. Compare and contrast a generic cyber attack, like a broad ransomware campaign, with an APT attack. A generic attack is often opportunistic, broad, and aims for a quick financial payout. An APT attack is highly targeted, patient, and persistent, remaining in a network for long periods to achieve strategic goals, like espionage, rather than immediate financial gain. Lesson 5.2, MITRE Attack. Welcome to Lesson 5.2. Imagine you need a comprehensive encyclopedia of every tactic and technique an enemy could possibly use. The MITRE Attack Framework is that encyclopedia for cybersecurity. It is a globally accessible knowledge base of adversary TTPs based on real-world observations. Our learning objective is to explain the purpose and structure of the MITRE Attack Framework. We'll explore what it is and how security teams use it as a common language. MITRE Attack stands for Adversarial Tactics, Techniques, and Common Knowledge. Its purpose is to provide a common vocabulary and a comprehensive catalog of all known ways an attacker can progress through an attack. It is a library of behaviors. The framework is organized into a matrix. The columns are the tactics, representing the attacker's objectives, like initial access, execution, and exfiltration. The rows under each column are the techniques, which are the specific methods used to achieve that tactic, such as phishing. Security teams use it to analyze threat intelligence, assess their own defensive gaps, and emulate adversary behavior for testing. I encourage you to explore this powerful resource firsthand. Here is your activity. Go to the official MITRE Attack website, explore the Enterprise Matrix,
Click on the Initial Access tactic and choose one technique to read about. When you do this, you will see the incredible depth of the framework. Clicking on Phishing reveals a detailed description, examples of threat groups who use it, and specific guidance for mitigation and detection. Now for our assessment. How can this framework be used defensively? Here is your prompt. How can a security team use the MITRE attack framework to identify weaknesses in their own defenses? A security team can use the ATT&CK framework as a checklist. They can go through the tactics and techniques and ask, do we have a security control or monitoring capability in place to prevent or detect this specific adversary behavior? This process helps them systematically find and prioritize their defensive gaps.
Lesson 5.3, MITRE Engage. Welcome to Lesson 5.3. Defending your kingdom isn't just about building higher walls. It's also about actively interfering with the enemy's plans, perhaps by setting up decoy supply wagons. MITRE Engage is a framework for this kind of proactive, active defense. Our objective is to understand how the MITRE Engage framework helps organizations interact with and influence adversary behavior. We will define its purpose and explore its core concepts. MITRE Engage is a framework for planning and executing adversary engagement and deception operations. It is not about hacking back. It is about safely managing interactions with an adversary to achieve defensive goals, like exposing their tools or understanding their intent. The Engage matrix is organized into approaches and activities. The columns are approaches, which are high-level defensive actions like disrupt, contain, disinform, and collect. The rows are activities, the specific things you can do. For example, under the disinform approach, you might use the decoy file activity, planting a fake document for the attacker to steal. To really solidify this concept, here's a chance to think from both an offensive and defensive perspective. Here is your activity. Consider the ATT&CK technique, phishing. Now propose a defensive engage action that would fall under the disrupt or affect approach. What this reveals are proactive strategies. For example, you might set up a system that automatically analyzes a submitted phishing email and reports the malicious infrastructure to a global block list, thereby disrupting the attacker's broader campaign. To conclude our lesson, let's summarize the core idea. Here is your prompt. What is the core concept of MITRE Engage, and what is its primary value in an active defense strategy? The core concept is to provide a structured methodology for safely engaging with adversaries. Its primary value is that it allows defenders to move beyond passive blocking and actively influence adversary behavior to gather intelligence, disrupt their operations, and ultimately improve overall security.
Lesson 5.4, MITRE D3FE&D. Welcome to Lesson 5.4. We have the Encyclopedia of Enemy Attacks, ATT&CK. We have the Playbook for Counterintelligence, Engage. Now we need the catalog of all possible defensive tools. MITRE D3FE&D is that catalog. Our learning objective is to describe the MITRE D3FE&D framework and its role in proactive defense. We will explain how it acts as the defensive counterpart to the offensive-focused ATT&CK framework. D3FE&D is a knowledge graph of cybersecurity countermeasures. Its purpose is to answer the question, you've identified an adversary technique from ATT&CK. What specific defensive technologies can you use to counter it? D3FE&D is the other side of the coin to ATT&CK. ATT&CK describes the problem. D3FE&D describes the solution. D3FE&D organizes defensive techniques under broad tactics like harden, detect, isolate, and deceive. Underneath these are specific technical methods. Security engineers use it for technology selection. When they find a gap using ATT&CK, they use D3FE&D to research the specific type of security technology they need to close that gap. This is a great one to try yourself to understand the Defender's toolkit. Here is your activity. Think of a common security tool, like an antivirus program. Which high-level D3 tactic does it primarily support? The output should clearly show you that an antivirus program primarily supports the detect tactic, as its main job is to identify and alert on malicious files and behaviors. Excellent work. To conclude, let's put these two frameworks together. Here is your prompt. In a comprehensive security strategy, what is the relationship between the MITRE ATT&CK framework and the MITRE D3 framework? They are complementary frameworks. ATT&CK is used to identify and understand offensive adversary techniques, the problem, while D3 is used to identify and select the appropriate defensive countermeasures and technologies to mitigate those techniques, the solution.
Module 6, Security Monitoring and Analysis Tools. Welcome to Module 6. Theory and frameworks are essential, but a security engineer is also a hands-on practitioner. This module introduces the practical tools of the trade, the digital magnifying glasses, listening devices, and scanners you will use to hunt for threats.
Lesson 6.1, Introduction to Network Security and Analysis. Welcome to Lesson 6.1. Imagine you're the security chief for a large city. You can't watch every person, but you can monitor the roads. Network security analysis is the art of watching the digital roads to protect the city as a whole. Our objective is to understand the fundamental principles of network security and the importance of network traffic analysis. We'll define network security and discuss the goals of network analysis. Network security consists of the policies and practices adopted to prevent and monitor unauthorized access to a network. The primary goal of network analysis is to gain visibility. You cannot protect what you cannot see. By capturing and reviewing the data flowing across the network, you can establish a baseline of what is normal, making it much easier to spot anomalies. This allows you to detect scanning activity, malware communication, data exfiltration, and denial of service attacks. To really bring this to life, I encourage you to think with this analogy. Here is your activity. List 3 types of suspicious vehicle behavior on a real road that have a parallel in network security. When you do this, the parallels become clear. A car driving slowly down every street is like a network scan probing for open ports. A suspicious van leaving a secure building is like data exfiltration. And a massive traffic jam blocking the city entrance is a denial of service attack. Now, to check our understanding of the core concept. Here is your prompt. Define network security analysis and explain its primary role in identifying threats. Network security analysis is the process of monitoring and interpreting network traffic to detect anomalies. Its primary role is to provide visibility into network activity, allowing security teams to spot malicious patterns that would otherwise be invisible.
Lesson 6.2, Wireshark. Welcome to Lesson 6.2. If network analysis is watching traffic on the roads, Wireshark is a magical pair of binoculars that lets you see inside every single car. It is the world's most popular network protocol analyzer and an essential tool. Our objective is to learn the basics of using Wireshark for capturing and analyzing network packets. We'll introduce the interface, explain how to perform a capture, and demonstrate how to use filters. The Wireshark interface has 3 main panes: the packet list at the top, the detailed packet details in the middle, and the raw packet bytes at the bottom. To perform a capture, you simply select a network interface and click Start. It immediately begins capturing all packets. The most powerful feature is the display filter bar. A capture can contain thousands of packets. Filtering is essential. You can type in rules to show only the packets you care about. For example, a filter of IP.address equals 8.8.8.8
will show all packets to or from that address, while a filter of DNS shows only domain name system traffic, revealing what websites a user is visiting. I encourage you to run this next tool to see the power of this feature firsthand. Here is your activity. Install Wireshark. Start a capture. Visit an unencrypted website like http://neverssl.com. Stop the capture. In the filter bar, type HTTP and press Enter. When you run this, the thousands of packets will instantly be reduced to just a handful. You'll clearly see the GET request your browser sent to the web server, and you can inspect every detail of that communication. Now for a quick assessment on filtering. You have captured traffic and want to see only communications between your computer at 192.168.1.100 and a server at 104.18.25.123. Here is your prompt. What display filter would you use in Wireshark? The correct filter would combine two statements with a logical AND. IP.address equals 192.168.1.100 and IP.address equals 104.18.25.123.
Lesson 6.3, Sysmon. Welcome to Lesson 6.3. If Wireshark monitors the roads between buildings, Sysmon is like a surveillance system inside a single Windows computer. It logs almost everything that happens, every process created, every network connection made, and every file touched. Our learning objective is to understand the capabilities of Sysmon for detailed system activity logging on Windows. We'll explain what it is and the type of high-value events it can log. System Monitor, or Sysmon, is a free tool from Microsoft. It installs as a system service and logs deep system activity to the standard Windows event log, where it can be collected by a SIEM. It's designed to log events that are of high interest from a security perspective. Key events include Event ID 1 for process creation, Event ID 3 for network connections, and Event ID 11 for file creation. Event ID 1, process creation, is extremely useful because it logs not just that a program started, but also its file hash and the full command line used to launch it. Event ID 3 logs every outbound network connection made by any process. These rich logs are invaluable for threat hunting. To really solidify this concept, here's a scenario to analyze without installing the tool. Here is your activity. A user opens a Word document, which launches PowerShell to download a malicious file. Which Sysmon event IDs would be most useful in spotting this chain of events? What this reveals is a clear trail. You would look for a process creation event where Word is the parent process that launches PowerShell. Then, you would look for a network connection event originating from that PowerShell process, followed by a file create event for the newly downloaded malicious file. To conclude our lesson, let's summarize its key benefit. Here is your prompt. Explain how Sysmon can aid in detecting malicious activity in a way that standard Windows logs might not. Sysmon aids in detection by providing much more detailed, security-relevant context. For example, instead of just logging that a process started, Sysmon's process create event also logs the file hash and the full command line, which can immediately reveal if a legitimate program like PowerShell is being used for malicious purposes.
Lesson 6.4, Endpoint Security and Monitoring. Welcome to Lesson 6.4. Traditional antivirus was like a security guard with a photo book of known criminals. Endpoint Detection and Response, or EDR, is like a modern behavioral detective. It doesn't just look for known criminals, it watches for suspicious behavior. Our objective is to define EDR and its role in protecting and monitoring endpoints. We'll trace the evolution from traditional antivirus to modern EDR and explain its key capabilities. EDR assumes that prevention will sometimes fail. Its primary focus is on detection and response. It evolved from traditional, signature-based antivirus to next-generation AV and finally to EDR. EDR solutions have several key capabilities. First, continuous monitoring and data collection. An agent on the endpoint acts like a surveillance camera, recording important events. Second, behavioral analysis and threat detection. This data is analyzed to detect suspicious patterns even from brand new malware. Third, automated response. EDR tools can automatically kill a suspicious process and isolate the infected endpoint from the network. And fourth, investigation and forensics, providing analysts with a rich, searchable database of historical activity. To get a feel for the EDR market, this is a great one to try yourself. Here's your activity. Research and identify 2 different commercial EDR solutions, such as CrowdStrike Falcon or Sentinel-1, and list 3 key features that each one highlights. What this reveals is a competitive landscape focused on features like AI-powered detection, real-time response capabilities, and integrated threat intelligence, all designed to stop breaches faster. To conclude, let's focus on the main advantage of this modern approach. Here's your prompt. Discuss the main advantage of an EDR solution over a traditional antivirus program when dealing with a new, never-before-seen malware attack. A traditional AV would likely fail because it wouldn't have a matching signature. An EDR solution's main advantage is its use of behavioral analysis. It would detect the malicious actions the malware performs after execution, like encrypting files, allowing it to identify and respond to a threat it has never seen before.
Lesson 6.5, Wazuh Basics. Welcome to Lesson 6.5. Imagine you want an all-in-one security system for your entire property. Cameras, door sensors, and active patrols. Wazuh is like an open-source, all-in-one security kit that provides all of these capabilities in a single platform. Our objective is to introduce the Wazuh platform for security monitoring, intrusion detection, and compliance. We'll describe what it is, its architecture, and its key functions. Wazuh is a free and open-source security platform, often categorized as a SIEM and XDR. Its key functions include log data analysis, file integrity monitoring to alert on changes to critical files, vulnerability detection to find known weaknesses, intrusion detection, and tools to help automate compliance reporting for frameworks like PCI DSS. Its architecture has 4 main components. The Wazuh agent is installed on endpoints to collect data. It sends this data to the Wazuh server, or manager, for analysis. The resulting alerts are stored in the Wazuh indexer and are viewed by an analyst in the Wazuh dashboard. This is a great one to trace yourself. Based on this architecture, think about how information flows. Here is your activity. Outline the flow of information for a security event in Wazuh. Where is it detected? Where is it sent? Where is it viewed? The output should clearly show you the path. The event is first detected by the agent on the endpoint. It is then sent to the server for analysis against the rule engine. The resulting alert is stored in the indexer and are ultimately viewed by an analyst in the dashboard. Now for a quick check on what the agent can do. Here is your prompt. What are 2 types of security data or events that the Wazuh agent can collect from an endpoint? The Wazuh agent can collect many types, but 2 key examples are system and application log files and file integrity data, which triggers an alert when critical files are modified.
Lesson 6.6, OpenVAS Basics. Welcome to Lesson 6.6. A vulnerability scanner like OpenVAS is an automated tool that walks around your digital house, systematically checking for thousands of known security weaknesses before an attacker can find them. Our learning objective is to understand the fundamentals of OpenVAS as an open-source vulnerability scanner. We will define vulnerability scanning and differentiate it from penetration testing. Vulnerability scanning is the automated process of proactively identifying security vulnerabilities. The scanner uses a large database of known flaws and runs checks on a target system to see if any are present. The output is a report that lists and ranks the found vulnerabilities by severity. OpenVAS can perform both unauthenticated scans from the outside and deeper authenticated scans where it logs into the target system. It's crucial to understand the difference between vulnerability scanning and penetration testing. Vulnerability scanning finds potential weaknesses, while pen testing exploits them. Vulnerability scanning is automated, broad, and identifies potential weaknesses. Penetration testing is manual, narrow, and involves a human ethical hacker attempting to exploit those weaknesses to see how far they could get. To really solidify this process, here's the scan you'll want to run in your mind. Here is your activity. Describe the steps to perform a basic vulnerability scan. Your steps should include defining the target, configuring the scan, running it, and analyzing the report. The output should clearly show you a logical workflow. First, you define your target IPs. Second, you choose a scan configuration. Third, you launch the scan. Finally, you receive and analyze the report, prioritizing the most critical vulnerabilities for remediation. Excellent work. To conclude, let's revisit that key distinction. Here is your prompt. Explain the difference between a vulnerability scan and a penetration test, and describe the role of a tool like OpenVAS. A vulnerability scan is an automated process that identifies potential weaknesses, while a penetration test is a manual process where a human tries to actively exploit them to see how far they could get. OpenVAS is a tool for performing the vulnerability scan. Its report is often the starting point for a penetration tester.
Module 7, Practical Security Tools. Welcome to Module 7. This module is a rapid-fire introduction to the wider ecosystem of security tools. Think of this as opening up the drawers of the security analyst's desk to see the specific gadgets used for day-to-day operations. As a note, always use these tools responsibly and only on assets you have permission to check.
Lesson 7.1, Introduction to Threat Intelligence. Welcome to Lesson 7.1. Imagine a messenger arrives and tells you, "We were just attacked by raiders. They used fire arrows and attack at dawn." This information is threat intelligence. It is evidence-based knowledge about a threat that can be used to inform your defensive decisions. Our objective is to define threat intelligence and explain its importance. We will discuss the different types and how it helps organizations make faster, more informed decisions. Threat intelligence helps security teams shift from a reactive to a proactive posture. There are three main types. Strategic intelligence is high-level information for leadership. Tactical intelligence is more technical information about an adversary's TTPs. And operational intelligence is highly technical, specific details about an attack, often consisting of indicators of compromise or IOCs, like malicious IP addresses or file hashes. This is a great one to try yourself to see how the information is tailored to the audience. Here is your activity. For each of the three types of threat intelligence, strategic, tactical, and operational, provide your own example and identify its audience. When you run this, you'll see the flow. A CEO receives strategic intelligence about risks to their industry. The SOC manager gets tactical intelligence on an adversary's methods. The firewall administrator receives operational intelligence, a list of IPs to block right now. Now, let's assess the value of this information. Here is your prompt. Discuss how threat intelligence can transform a reactive security posture into a proactive one. Tactical intelligence allows a team to understand an attacker's methods and proactively strengthen defenses against those specific techniques. Operational intelligence, like IOCs, allows them to proactively block a known attack before it ever reaches their systems, thus shifting from responding to a breach to preventing it entirely.
Lessons 7.2 to 7.10, Rapid Tool Introduction. The following lessons introduce specific, often web-based, tools. They are designed for quick familiarization. First, the Email Verified tool. Before investigating a suspicious email, you need to know if the address is even real. This is a great one to try yourself in your lab, using a tool like Hunter.io's Email Verifier. Your action is to check a known good email address. When you run this, you'll see a report confirming if the email format is valid and if the domain can receive mail. This is an important first step to determine if the address is a real target or simply fake, saving valuable investigation time. Next, the Email Leak Checker tool. Data breaches happen constantly, and these tools let you see if your credentials have been compromised. I encourage you to run this next check to see the power of this feature firsthand. Use the tool Have I Been Pwned? Your action is to check a non-sensitive personal email address. The output will reveal if your email address has appeared in any known data breaches. If you find that it has, the single most important action you should take immediately is to change the password for that account and for any other account where you may have reused that same password. Now, for MISP, the Malware Information Sharing Platform. MISP is an open-source platform that allows trusted communities to share threat intelligence with each other in a standardized format. The core benefit is collaborative defense. It allows the entire community to defend itself more effectively against common threats based on the principle that a threat to one is a threat to all. Let's look at a malware database. When you find a suspicious file, you need to know if it's known malware. To really solidify this concept, here's the search you'll want to run using a tool like Malware Bazaar or VirusTotal. Your action is to look up a recent submission. What this reveals is a rich set of data for any given malware sample, including its unique file hash, file type, and the detection ratio from dozens of antivirus engines. In an incident, this allows a responder to quickly confirm if a suspicious file is known malware by checking its hash, speeding up the response process. Next up, botnet block tools. These aren't standalone tools, but threat intelligence feeds that identify the command and control servers used by botnets. Security tools subscribe to these lists, like those from abuse.ch, and automatically block any network traffic going to or from these known malicious destinations. This severs the connection between the infected bot computer and the attacker's control server, effectively neutralizing it. Now, the SSL certificate check tool. The padlock in your browser relies on an SSL certificate to prove a website's identity. This is a great one to try yourself, using a tool like SSL Shopper's SSL Checker. Your action is to inspect the certificate of a major website like Google.com. When you do this, you'll see details like the expiration date and who issued the certificate. A fake or expired certificate presents two major risks: a lack of confidentiality, as traffic may not be encrypted, and a lack of authentication, meaning you could be on a phishing site. What about a suspicious link? You can't click it. Instead, you use a URL verified tool. I encourage you to use this next tool to see the power of safe browsing. Use a tool like URL Void or VirusTotal URL Scan. Your action is to check a known safe URL, then a suspicious one. The output will clearly show you a risk score based on dozens of blacklists. These tools contribute to preventing phishing attacks by allowing users and security systems to check the safety of a link before visiting it, breaking the attack chain. When reading a threat report, you'll need an IOC Finder tool. An indicator of compromise is a piece of digital evidence of a breach. To really see how this works, here's the analysis you'll want to run using a tool like IOC Parser or CyberChef. Your action is to paste a paragraph from a cybersecurity blog post. When you do this, the tool will automatically extract patterns like IP addresses, file hashes, and domain names into a clean list. An IOC is a forensic artifact indicating malicious activity, like the file hash of known malware or the IP address of an attacker server. Finally, the File Verify tool. How do you know a downloaded file hasn't been tampered with? You use cryptographic hashes. To really solidify this concept, here's the check you'll want to run. Your action is to download a program that provides a hash. Then use a command line tool like certutil on Windows or shoalsum on Linux or macOS to calculate the hash. The Windows command is certutil.exe hash file, the greater than sign, capital SHA 256. When you run this, you can compare your calculated hash to the one provided by the developer. If they match, the file is authentic. This is crucial for system security because it provides a reliable way to detect unauthorized modifications to critical system files or software.
Master Course Conclusion. Congratulations on completing the Introduction to Security Engineering Master Course. You began this journey by defining the very identity of a security engineer. You then laid the essential groundwork by learning the fundamentals of the IT systems they protect. With that foundation, you explored the rule book of critical regulations and conceptual frameworks. You studied the adversary, learning their methodologies and our structured processes for response. You elevated your knowledge with advanced threat intelligence concepts, and finally, you opened the toolbox, gaining familiarity with the practical, hands-on tools used every day. You have built a comprehensive foundational understanding of the what and the why behind security engineering. The next step in your journey would be to move from theory to practice, applying these concepts in hands-on labs and real-world scenarios to build the practical skills of an intermediate-level practitioner. Your learning path has just begun.